Earlier this morning, I participated in a September 11th ceremony here in Hopedale at Atria Draper Place, along with the selectmen, our state representative and state senator, members of our fire and police departments, and others gathered together. We remembered those who died. We remembered those who responded to the events and the tragedy. We came together as a community and honored service and dedication and bravery and memory and lives lost. This morning, however, in this space, I would rather reflect on what those events have done to us. 15 years on, what impact have those events had on our souls, on our hearts, on who we are as individuals and as a nation? 9/11 has certainly become a generational marker. Anyone old enough to remember it knows where they were and what they were doing when it happened or when they first heard the news. I was teaching high school, Cathedral High School in the south end of Boston. As it happened, it was the time of day where we were watching on a closed-circuit TV in the classroom a news service for high school students to which we had a subscription. And every day there was a 15-minute news and current events thing that we watched with the entire school. In the middle of it, of course, there was a commercial break so that sneakers and backpacks and clothing could be pitched to a captive teenage audience. And just as that segment was ending, the service came back on, something was shown as the next event, and all of a sudden it went out. The service died out. The teacher on the room that had a door adjacent to mine came through the back of the classroom. "Is your TV go?" "Yeah, mine went out too." Strange, but these things happened. We started to go back around about our business. Moments later, we got written notices from runners from the school office that there was breaking news happening in New York City. It was violent. There may have been an attack. We don't know what's going on. Please keep the kids in the classroom. My co-teacher immediately tried to get real television on her TV set up in the room. Unlucky, the teacher across the hall from me was a science teacher and had rigged up an antenna to hers. So she picked up channel 4 and 5 and 7 out of Boston and saw the images. And with a room full of kids, immediately shut it off. Not much longer after that, we received another note written in paper from runners from our office that we were in lockdown. That we're not to let anyone in or out of the classrooms or anyone in or out of the building until further notice. Our school day that day went on an hour longer than it used to. Lunch was delivered to the rooms. Strange things were going on, and we pieced together the information a little at a time. Phone calls, messages came in to people. We had 2 people in the building who had immediate family members in the towers. The mood was chaotic, to say the least, and we were all doing our best to maintain a semblance of order and normalcy for the students. One thing I noticed as we crested into the afternoon was our school was on a direct flight path out of Logan. A dozen times a day, we'd have a plane close enough and loud enough that, I had to pause what I was saying, or whoever was speaking in class had to wait a minute. And I noticed there were no planes. It was really eerily quiet around the school. On the way home, when we finally left, I noticed a lot more police presence than I usually did on that commute. And I remember getting home and watching the news pretty much constantly for hours, not able to fall asleep well. I'm sure you remember too. How did you feel? I felt vulnerable. disoriented, in shock, traumatized. And I was far removed from the events. In the days following, my pacifist-leaning self has never been more hawkish. Like many others, I was in reptilian limbic fight-or-flight brain mode. Whenever I heard news, I wanted violent revenge. When I didn't hear news, I wanted the whole thing to go away and crawl away and hide. Fight and flight, alternating terms at the same time. The lingering tendrils of fear, I remember, lingered for a while. Like many others, I was emotionally feeling the fragility of human life. The illusion of security that we might have had was gone. And we now lived with the immediacy and uncertainty of violence that many places in the world have lived with and still live with on a daily basis. It was now ours too. Our national response was strong and forceful, and many brave and courageous people died in that response. And yet there was also a certain lack, I think, of understanding in the long view, and I wonder what that might have caused us as we go down the road further and further from the events. In the days following, we saw scapegoating to an immense degree. All Muslims, all Arabs. We started to keep national secrets. We were lied to about who was responsible and who we were going to go to war to and blame for it. Our society was already on the road to many things, but these have increased in the years since. We have become more fearful, more angry, more anxious, more suspicious. Everything is out to get us. The blacks, the Mexicans, the immigrants, the gays, the Muslims, the government, the liberals, the Tea Party. We grow ever more suspicious, fearful, and tribal. We become, as a people, maybe not some of us as individuals, but certainly as American people, we've become more isolationist, more xenophobic, allowing the darker angels of our nature to grow and win the day. There's never enough. We've entered a scarcity mode of epic proportions. There's not enough money, there are not enough jobs, there's not enough safety and security to make us feel good anymore. We have become less involved and less connected. Volunteerism is down, church attendance is down, membership in civic groups and community organizations is down. We are a fearful, closed-off, anxious, scared, tribal, disconnected people. In the years since, when tragedies have followed, mass shootings, other terrorist attacks, and our responses come out, and we hear leaders from the president on down telling us, in spite of these events, we are not these people. This is not who we are as a people. We are not violent. We are not apprehensive. We are not prejudiced. And yet, maybe this is who we are as a people. We are all the good things, but we're also all those things we want to swear we're not when the successive tragedies and terrorisms happen. The more disconnected we become from each other, the more difficult it is for all of us to believe as individuals and a community that we are loved, we are worthy, we are accepted. And 15 years on, I think our current cultural climate, as evidenced by, not caused by, just evidenced by our current election season, gives us no doubt that this is where we are. Sociologist and shame researcher Brene Brown began her research 6 months before 9/11. And she says her research, which includes over 10,000 pieces of data, Her research shows that we have indeed become increasingly fearful, scared, anxious, and disconnected since 9/11. I wonder sometimes if the super macho, uber patriotic nationalism that we evidence in the years since is because maybe there's a collective shame for many that the might of America could have been so vulnerable in the first place to such events. This type of vulnerability certainly has a survival function. There's a threat. Let's get safe. Fight or flight. But perhaps in the years since, with time, to have a more rational and measured approach, I wonder if we've not done that and we've overdone the fear and the fight or the flight. I think one of our cultural coping mechanisms over the last 15 years has been indeed to be overly chest-thumpingly patriotic. So much so that we create a shame culture against anyone who doesn't evidence what we think is an appropriate level of patriotism. I think of the current controversy going on over football players not standing for the national anthem. And oh, what a storm we're in for today, on opening day of NFL season. That there's a shaming of people as unpatriotic for not standing for the national anthem. And yet almost an inability to see that that's not a blind protest. One, it's exercising the right to protest, which is supposed to be part of what we're all about as a people. But second of all, there's a concern over the not standing for the national anthem and an ignoring of the systemic racism and social cultural conditions that caused the protest in the first place. But we can't go there because it wouldn't be patriotic enough. And there's an ironic element to this uber patriotism and shaming where we see a lack of patriotism in the years since. I think it's because we have a misconception of vulnerability. We only associate vulnerability with weakness and frailty and gullibility. And yet, according to Brene Brown's research, vulnerability is a strength. Without it, we cannot be what she calls wholehearted. And she says wholeheartedness is the capacity to engage our lives with authenticity, cultivate courage and compassion, and embrace, not in a self-happy motivational seminar way, but really deeply, profoundly embrace, she says, the imperfections of who we really are. Her research showed that the only difference between wholehearted people and everyone else was one thing, that wholehearted people felt worthy of love and acceptance and loved and accepted themselves. That was the only difference. It had nothing to do with growing up rich or poor, had nothing to do with having many of life's advantages or disadvantages. Whether somebody was able to demonstrate what she called wholeheartedness rested solely on the person's ability to feel loved and accepted and to love and accept themselves. And she noticed that people who did not demonstrate wholeheartedness all had some similarities. They practiced perfectionism, judgment of themselves and others. They valued exhaustion as a status symbol. They valued productivity as a measure of their self-worth. They valued the needing to be cool, calm, and collected. They worried a lot about what other people thought about them and what they did. They thought they had to perform to get praise. They all seemed to be on a quest for absolute certainties. I think all of us know those things in well enough measure. But she said, to those who are not wholehearted, they had that whole list going. She said, wholehearted people are courageous. We show up, wholehearted people do, as our genuine selves without guarantees of acceptance or success, because we intrinsically trust that we are loved and accepted. Thus, she says, wholehearted people are a hopeful people. And she says this because she defines hope not as an emotion, but a cognitive behavioral process that we learn when we experience and overcome adversity, when we have relationships that are trustworthy and have faith in our ability to get out of a jam. In a sense, hope is a process of resiliency, not a dream or a fantasy that things just might be better. Church is a place where we are supposed to practice being human. So this year I'm going to encourage us to practice being human, to be vulnerable in healthy ways, to risk sharing our stories and our feelings and who we really are with all our mess and faults with each other, to share how we really feel with one another about things, even when it's difficult. And I challenge all of us, including myself, to respond with the care and compassion that creates trust and encourages more vulnerability. I encourage all of us, and that includes me, to listen deeply to each other, to demonstrate the love and acceptance that is our claim to our deepest religious values, that all are lovable. I encourage us to stay engaged with the world around us, to show up, to try things, be it a conversation with me, a ministry in the church, outreach work in the community. Show up and be present with your real self, with all of you as you are, the good and the bad and the in-between, without guarantee of success. I encourage us all to be more wholehearted and less fearful and less anxious. Brene Brown's research taught her that courage is actually born of vulnerability. In all her over 10,000 pieces of data, not one example of any type of courage she found did not require the person demonstrating courage to be vulnerable. I think one way we sometimes put this is anything worth doing has to be worth failing. That kind of vulnerability. And it plays into the cliches we know about courage, but are cliche because they're very real, that if you're not scared, it's not brave. And the old line from John Wayne, one of his westerns, courage is being scared and saddling up anyway. May we all do our best at making this place a place where people are loved and accepted. May this practice help us risk vulnerability and bravery. May doing this give us hope. And may this hope transform us and the world around us.